He gonna swing on me. I ain't did nothing to that man, bro. I just had to cool off, right? Just get my mind right, man, you know. But I really gotta get this off my shit, man.
Even though the VIP area was a flurry of activity. Kirk Frost and young Jock were not acting like their usual flamboyant, gregarious selves. In contrast to the other VIPs, they were dressed to kill and were constantly moving and scouring the dance floor while standing in their corner booth and gazing out over the audience like kings. Kirk nodded slightly, and Jock leaned forward and murmured something. His focus never wavering, despite there seeming the rest of the room was filled with people dancing, shouting, and taking pictures. But Kirk and Jock were not there to partake in the festivities. Instead, they were using their booth, which gave them the perfect vantage point. Everyone crowded around Lil Scrappy when he finally arrived, displaying his typical swagger, beaming widely and enthusiastically, and lighting up the room as only he could, unaware of the danger that was about to befall him. In addition to laughing and clinking glasses, Dap was doing what he did best, taking selfies. I commend his hugs. Because Scrappy was on 10, his charisma enthralled the crowd, and when he walked in, the atmosphere was totally changed. That's exactly what happens when Scrappy shows up. He takes center stage, but most people were just there for the pleasure. And some observant bystanders noticed something more. Kirk and Jock were still watching Scrappy's every step on the dimly lit VIP area floor. But it was still dark to the average party-goer. Seemed to be doing well, but a dancer close to the bar suddenly halted and faced the audience, raising concerns. After Scrappy entered the booth, the mood diminished. As the Jock nodded, checked his phone, and then slowly looked back out over the throng, Kirk leaned in again. Because each spotlight casts a shadow, the DJ, Scrappy's crew, and 2 security guards paused in the middle of the change, lowering the tempo a little as if he sensed something was changing. Jockey nodded slightly to Scrappy and said in a low, harsh voice. The laughing and joking gave way to a serious, grave gaze. Kirk narrowed his eyes and followed the blink. A waitress brought them another round, but she didn't like the mood and put the bottle down softly, remained silent, and left with slightly shaking hands. She could feel it, too. The individuals in the booth started to notice how still. Kirk and Jock had become predators waiting for a chance because the phone's cameras had not yet been enabled. Meanwhile, many present felt that something was going on. Scrappy was still, making jokes with his crew when he stopped, looked back, and looked at Kirk and Jock long enough for everyone to notice the difference. Then, to let him know that they were prepared and not just watching, one of his boys leaned down and whispered something in his ear.
Look at me, look at me. Let me go. Look at me, look at me. Man, I'm frustrated, irritated.
Kirk and young Jock abandoned their VIP position and began to make their way through the crowd when the silence was finally broken. They were not yet shouting, but their feet were determined and purposeful, and the atmosphere altered in an instant. Conversations ceased close to the center of the dance floor. Scrappy and his companions were still having a good time when he saw the movement and saw them coming toward the crowd, which dispersed. As they got closer, he turned to face them with his arms outstretched and inquired, "What's up?" While attempting to keep a neutral expression, neither Kirk nor Jock came in grinning, perhaps out of curiosity or caution, but his voice had lost its fervor as he asked in a cold, wary tone. Instead, they virtually squeezed shoulder to shoulder, too close for comfort, and there was a lot of energy flowing between them. Seemed to be having trouble with the music, even though it was still booming. But then the change started, and the slight tension abruptly became a horrible one. The Jock's eyebrows changed, clearly astonished, and he kept eye contact throughout, despite his low voice at first. Kirk pretended to be a little confused when he addressed his question, but he didn't wait for an answer. He licked your lips and plunged right in when we weren't there, smiling in our faces and doing just what we intended. Kirk pulled out his phone to serve as evidence in court after the screen displayed pre-made receipts. At that point, the issue became less serious, and you thought we wouldn't get this back. You were talking outrageously in the studio last week, and we were given the receipts once more. Do you think people are devoted to you because they sent us? Everything after a glance at the phone. Scrappy turned back to Kirk. I said what I said, but it wasn't how you're trying to twist it. But Kirk refused to back down, whether you have context or not, he added, raising his voice a little. It's not even the entire conversation. If you guys don't put things in perspective, he added, period. Now that the alleged evidence was in hand, the tension changed. And Scrappy's cheeks reddened as the atmosphere grew more intense. His normally composed manner broke almost as quickly. You all are acting like I'm some snake, but I have been real with both of you more times than I can count. I'm scared of receipts. Snappy snap, he added. You believe that none of you are loyal anymore, but half of you are still dishonest. Everything changed when the volume was increased. The DJ noticed the shift and toned down the music a bit. When the phone started recording and others who had not been listening started to pay attention. To stay on guard, security guards surrounding the edge of the dance floor began to move closer and more surreptitiously. Kirk's cell phone was indicated by Scrappy, who added, You want to show the others that you were talking slickly about me. When I wasn't around, the comments were a forceful blow. Jock made an automatic move to halt it, but Kirk said, but Scrappy showed no signs of cooling off. The crowd had gathered around them, allowing everyone in the club to see them because they were close, but not too close. Kirk Frost and young Jock were not acting like the showy, active royalty they typically are, even though the VIP area was bustling with activity. They stood at their corner booth, looking out over the crowd, both completely clothed, but something wasn't quite right. That trust, pride, and respect were now on the line. It was more than words beneath the throbbing lights. Everything was on the line, so there was a palpable sense of anxiety. There were just a few seconds left before the final spark ignited the entire thing. Yes, unlike the other VIPs, they weren't drinking or enjoying themselves. They were wearing glasses, yet their eyes were constantly moving as they scanned the dance floor. Kirk gave a small nod, his focus on the task at hand, while Jock bent down to whisper something. Although most clubgoers thought they were cool and collected, their body language showed that they were drinking. Instead of celebrating, Kirk and Jock were seizing the perfect opportunity. The other people in the room seemed to be laying in wait, since they were so occupied with dancing, yelling, and taking pictures. Then Lil Scrappy appeared, unaware of the drama that was about to break out. When he entered with his usual swagger, everyone rushed to him. His eagerness was evident, and he lit up the room like no one else could. I'm proud of Dap's hugs. He was having a blast, clinking glasses, laughing out loud, and taking photos when Scrappy arrived. When he arrived, the entire atmosphere changed, and the audience adored his enthusiasm. He was on 10. Scrappy took the stage at that moment, but some perceptive onlookers noticed something more. Kirk and Jock remained concentrated, and everyone's eyes were on Scrappy's motions, while the majority of people were absorbed in the fun, in the dimly illuminated VIP area across the floor. Everything seemed to be going okay for the average party-goer. But the tension was starting too. There was a crackling for those who were listening. But then a dancer by the bar slowed down and looked over at Scrappy's group. In the midst of the transition, the DJ paused, decreasing his beat a little as if he felt something was shifting. And two security guards delicately shifted each spotlight, casting a shadow. In addition, the atmosphere became colder as Scrappy was advancing directly into his booth. The Jock nodded and looked at his phone before Kirk spoke in a rough, low voice. Returned a gentle glance to Scrappy, who had been silently staring at him for a while without a grin or a joke. As she brought another round, her hands trembling a little, the waitress stopped cold, something about the excitement. She could sense it too, even if camera phones were not yet available. So she set the bottle down softly, remained silent, and walked away. The Jock gave Scrappy a subtle nod, and Kirk squinted, but neither of them recoiled. People began to notice how still Kirk and Jock were now circling the booth like predators waiting for the right opportunity. Despite all of this, Scrappy continued to be spotted having fun with his group. To Scrappy's ear, however, one of his boys leaned in and whispered something. After a moment of hesitation, Scrappy glanced over his shoulder and kept his gaze on Kirk and Jock long enough for everyone to realize that they had changed and that the wait was over. They were no longer merely observing. Me, buddy. I'm waiting impatiently and annoyed.